I want to do this recording for our revision class later. I'm worried about my internet at home. What I've done is I have uploaded an outline here for our revision later on, but I'm worried that my internet is not working because it has been down for an hour. So basically what I will do is I will just record this session, and then later on I will upload it into the YouTube and using my mobile data, and send the link to students' email while I upload the YouTube here as well. So there's a outline for revision and then the YouTube video later on. So this is the recording for the revision class. Instead of the revision class, I'm doing the recording because I worried that my internet will not be working because it has been down for 1 hour now. So if you download the document in Padlet, you will get this outline which I will use to do our revision today. So this is a pre-recorded video. So for revision for minimum wages or sweatshops condition, so again, if the question comes up, there will be some news cutting or article cutting that I will post, and then I will ask to what extent do you agree regarding this issue, whether it's minimum wage or sweatshop. So as usual, you will have these 4 sections in your essay. So your discussion of the moral issue, you have to give some definition and also give some example. Then you move on to roughly about 200 words. Then you move on to explain why do you think that market wage rate or prevailing sweatshop conditions is ethical. Why is this ethical? So there are some argument here. Of course, you have to refer back to the lesson that we have on Padlet. The person who will argue this will be Ian Maitland. Can you remember? Ian Maitland will argue that it is ethical because it is out of their own free will. The employees, the workers themselves, on their own, they have the freedom to choose. They decide to work in the factory, and of course, if you compare with other option available, this is the best option. It's better to work here than to work in a rubbish dump, exposed to the element. And furthermore, you look at a lot of countries that have gone through this sweatshop working condition. You will find that they are now on the path to develop country status. Look at countries like South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong. So these are all examples of countries that have gone through this path. And in the long run, of course, they are better off if you set other minimum wage that is higher than the market wage, or you set other condition that is beyond the prevailing condition. What will happen is foreign direct investment will go to other countries. So in the long run, they become worse off. So you let them be, they will be better off. Furthermore, if you manipulate the wage rate or working condition, it may lead to tragic consequences. Example, higher pay, higher proportion of informal market for the laborers, and they will tend to be more exploited and their condition is worse off. Of course, those who argue for minimum wage or living wage, they will base it on Kantian ethics. So the person behind this, the 2 person behind this will be Arnold and Bowie. So you refer back to the argument there. Their single ethical theory they use is Kantian ethics, and they base it on the second formulation of the categorical imperative, and it's a very robust argument that they presented. So the second formulation will say that treat people as end in themselves, not merely as means. If you treat them not merely as means, it means that for them, Arnold and Bowie will construe this as meaning don't cause harm to others. This entails not using coercion, physical and psychological, and at least follow minimum safety standard and what the law require in terms of working condition. Because law is there to protect people, you see. So at the very least, don't cause harm. But beyond that, the second formulation of Kantian ethics will entail also treating people as end in themselves, which include positive action, doing something positive, which is paying people a living wage enough for them to cover for their necessities. Furthermore, although Kantian ethics don't look at the consequences, Arnold and Bowie will say that the consequences is that they are even better off if this is the case. You respect them as a person, respect them with dignity. These workers who are working in very bad conditions, you respect them with human dignity, treating them with intrinsic worth. There are better consequences as well. For example, it can be treated as a CSR, and because they don't get hungry all the time, they tend to work harder, the productivity will go up, and furthermore, any increase in the wages tend to pass on to the customer, and the customer don't mind paying for this. Then finally, after you presented all this argument, the student will have to take a side. So you have to decide whether you support Ian Maitland or you support Arnold and Bowie's position. Now, I have been asked about Solar and Englander. What is their view? Their view is that they challenge Arnold and Bowie, and they claim that Arnold and Bowie has applied Kantian ethics wrongly. If they applied correctly, it entails only not treating them in a way that causes harm. There is no need for a requirement of paying them a living wage. So in any case, the student have to take a position and explain why you reject one side, whichever side you reject, and why you accept the other side, so whichever side you accept. This part is important. Okay, for the case of bribery, again, there will be some citation of context, some citation of a case, or some citation of a journal article or magazine article or newspaper article. After that citation, the issue is whether bribery is ethical or not. So you have to define and give some example of the moral issue. And here are some arguments that will say bribery is ethical. Ethical relativism, if it is the norm of the country, that's what the culture of the country practice, then you say it is the right thing to do. Or if you apply ethical egoism, you will say that if giving a bribe serve self-interest, then that's the right thing to do. Ethical parochialism would be if it is serving the interest of your own group, your in-group, your own group of people, it maximizes benefit to your own group of people, then it's the right thing to do. Utilitarianism will be the case where you weigh all the cost and all the benefit, and if the cost is less than the benefit outweighs the cost, meaning then that's the right decision to do. Giving a bribe result in benefits outweighing cost, then that's the right action to take. And there are of course arguments that will challenge why bribery is ethical. They will say that it is unethical. Bribery is unethical. Kantian ethics, of course, will argue that it fails the first and second formulation, cannot be universalized, and you're treating people as a mean to an end. You're using people. And prima facie duty will differentiate between the bribe giver and the bribe taker. Bribe giver, you have to look at the detailed situation and see which duty is most incumbent, and you perform that duty, then that's the right thing to do. For the bribe taker, usually it will be the wrong thing to do, because in the end, what happened is the bribe taker actually take the bribe for self-interest, violation of their fiduciary duty, acting in good faith on the company they represent. As a result, the contract or the product that is being paid for is of lesser quality but higher price, and so on. So ethical for the bribe giver, given if the circumstances is such that it is the most incumbent to do, if And unethical for the bribe taker usually because it's the wrong thing to do. They're acting against their fiduciary duty towards the corporation they serve. Virtue ethics, of course, they will say no because a virtuous person would not do this. This is something that a person of high integrity will not do. But there is a caveat, remember? There's a caveat. There's a caveat involved where if there are no option at all, if you are pressed in a corner and you have to pay this bribe just to save your company, you have no other option, and it is it's unethical, but however this giving of bribe is not a habitual act, you have never done such thing before, after consulting with your senior or with your senior management, with your team, you say that it is not something that I do, it's not something that is part of my habit, and it's not something that I stand for, but at this point in time, at this juncture, I have no option, I will do this, so you will claim that it is an unethical thing to do, but I will still do it for the sake of saving my company, but it will not be repeated. So, and because virtue ethics takes into consideration reality of human life, but it's not perfect, not perfect. Libertarianism will argue for who owns property of this bribe, who is the property owner of the bribe. The bribe giver will have property ownership of the bribe, and because you own this bribe amount, this amount of money, you have the right to do whatever you want with that money, you see, as long as you don't prevent others from doing the same. But the bribe taker is different. The bribe taker is different. The bribe taker actually is taking or stealing property that is not rightfully theirs. The bribe taker is stealing the company's property. Therefore, it's unethical for the bribe taker. And libertarianism will argue that there should be law against bribe taker. Social contract theory will argue that this kind of giving and taking of bribe is against the law and even against religion, and therefore it is unethical. And all these argument I have actually covered in our lesson before on bribery. Again, the student will have to consider the argument and take a side and explain why one side is rejected and one side is accepted. So there must be some argument provided why a student will take one side. Make sure you choose a side that has justification. Okay, for CSR, the question will be asked regarding narrow view and the broad view. So again, if this question comes up, there will be some article that's being discussed, and then some statement to ask to what extent you agree or disagree or critically discuss the debate regarding the moral issue surrounding the narrow view and the broad view. So you must have some definition of CSR and some example and explanation of what is the narrow view, shareholders perspective, argument about the invisible hand, Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, and also talk about the CSR model, where is the narrow view located, and agency theory as explained by Friedman. So the assumption is people are serving their self-interest. This is a given in society. And this falls within the constrained view of man. You see, we are selfish. You see. At the same time, you believe in libertarianism as the norm. This is widely practiced. People are allowed freedom to do what they want with their life, and this kind of a liberty is actually a negative rights. A negative right. Negative right means that you can do what you want with your life, with your property, as long as you don't prevent others from doing the same. You allow others the freedom as well. So your liberty, your right or freedom is actually to the extent that you are not allowed to prevent others from enjoying the same liberty. And as a result, the argument is that if this happen, the invisible hand will take over, and because of the pricing mechanism, everyone will be better off. Although this is not what has been intended as a consequence. Unintended consequences is everyone become better off. Utilitarian argument. That's why the narrow view is ethical. The broad view, as championed by Edward Freeman, posit a stakeholders perspective that says that um, decision of the firm must be made in a way that takes into consideration the various stakeholders of the firm, various parties that's affected by the decision of the firm, and they explain this in the CSR model. And here they respect equality of responsibility and duty towards different stakeholders, and this is on the basis of a social contract theory. This organization, this firm exists in a community where decision or action of the firm by the management of the firm will impact different stakeholders within that community. And as a result, there is an implicit social contract where decision and action must take into consideration various stakeholders in that community. And at the same time, the argument is that externalities like pollution, cost, and harm done to society, to the environment, and so on, has to be taken into account for in order to reflect the true cost, true social cost that's incorporated into the price of your product. Here, externalities is not incorporated into the pricing of the product. As a result, the product is cheaper. But here, true cost, true social cost must be incorporated into the pricing of the product to reflect these externalities that's being corrected as a result of prevention of pollution and harm to society. Then student again has to argue which side they take as their own, they accept one side, and why they reject the other side. Okay. Okay, let's continue. The last topic here, sorry, my house, there's a power failure, so I'm running on battery now on my laptop. I think yesterday they doing some repair work on the electricity power the switchboard. So no battery, no internet. So okay, question 4. Exporting pollution. This is the Lawrence Summer case. LAWREN Summers, the Lawrence Summers case. So so some explanation about pollution, some example which talking about Lawrence Summer, and explanation about rich country, poor country. Why is there a consideration of shifting these polluting factories to the poorer country? Why is there a need for this? And the context of Lawrence Summers writing these notes. So the argument by Summers, of course, this argument here is by Lawrence Summers. He says that if harm is to be done by pollution, it should be done in a country where the foregone earning is lowest, meaning the people who get sick or die due to pollution, these people are the one who earn less money. So of course it should be happening in a poorer country than in a rich country, because that will cost less, isn't it? Lower opportunity cost. And furthermore, if you were to shift your factories to a poor country to manufacture your product while polluting the environment, you look at the cost of pollution is lower in a poor country. You look back at the curve that I have shown, very low level in a poor country where pollution is very low and people are the country is sparsely populated. And as a result, since the country has a better environmental quality of the environment is better, so a little bit more pollution will not cause a lot of harm as compared to higher costs and higher harm in the rich country. As a result of shifting from the rich country to the poor country, this factory will benefit the rich country a lot and cause little harm to the poor country. And in any case, they will argue also that the demand for clean environment in the poor country is very low because it's high income elasticity. People who are in a poor country because they have low income, they don't care about the environment, they care about other things like medicine, education, safety, roof, and then food, and so on. So the basic necessity is more important than clean environment. As a result, if you shift a factory to the poor country and the factory pays workers a salary, they would rather take this salary home and to buy medicine for their parents, for their children, pay for education, buy food, have a shelter, and so on. They will not be bothered about the factory having more pollution in the air and in the water because the demand for clean environment in the poor country is low. But the demand in a rich country, of course, people have everything in a rich country. They will want a better quality environment. And furthermore, the argument is that the mortality rate in the poor country is very high. If someone gets sick and die, it will not be as drastic an increase than in a rich country where people live a long life to get very rare form of sickness, and therefore the harm done to people in a rich country will be more shocking, if more people suddenly die. But the argument further says that in any way, the concern is more about aesthetic. So it's not so much that more people will die. It's just that the environment is not so clean, not so beautiful. That's all. No people is being harmed. So the entire argument why exporting polluting factories to third world country or to poor country is based on a utilitarian argument based on what Summers has written in the notes. But Hausman has argued the case that this form of argument is not acceptable, it is unethical, and the exporting of polluting industry to the poor is unethical because of these three reasons. Number one, in the first place, it does not solve the pollution problem. In fact, sending the pollution far away actually aggravate the situation. Secondly, the assumption is that the pollution being sent overseas are localized. It will not escalate and it will not spread to other parts of the world. But that's not true. So that's an assumption. This is inherently a problem due to if you apply utilitarian ethics, you are not able to ascertain the extent of the consequences. You can't foretell the future, you see. What harm can be done in a country where pollution will go into crops, in this poor country where agriculture is the main industry in that country, as the crop are being exported worldwide. What's the harm done to other countries as a result of exporting crop with pollution, pesticide, and so on? Furthermore, this form of negotiation between the rich and the poor country to say that you are better off, your life is not worth much, the foregone earning is very low, blah blah blah. This form of negotiation, this form of exchange, is actually a form of exploitation. It's unjust, based on Hausman's argument. So now the student have to take a side and say, is it ethically right or is it ethically wrong? Which side do you want to take and which side do you want to reject? So if you have further recommendation, for example, what's the right thing to do, then you should argue your case. Okay, that's all. So 4 topics. In fact, the 4 topics I have taught you before in the previous lesson, and here is just a summary and outline of what you can use for your exam answers. Of course, this is just an outline. You have to develop this based on the material that you have been taught. Hopefully you can do a good job. I forgot to write down the word count. So here the second part should be roughly about 600 words, and the third section should be about 600 words. And finally, a student's position, students should take a side, it should be about 600 words. About, so I'm not saying compulsory, so it depends on how you write, okay? So 2666, a rough guide, okay, a rough guide. So I've revised the 4 topics: minimum wage, bribery, CSR, and pollution. Now you can look at the detail on the Padlet. All the information are there, so you can still contact me, if email me, WhatsApp me if you have further question to ask me. Thank you.